All right, Crystal, good morning. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So I understand that you're heading out west to British Columbia, maybe returning back home. What's your favorite part about being out there?
Well, I miss the mountains probably the most and the freshwater lakes. They're just, you can't beat a glacier-fed lake with a sandy beach in the middle of some mountains. And that's essentially where my hometown is nestled. So that part of going home is always like super restorative and just gets me excited to head back.
Oh yeah, sounds terrible. Who wouldn't want that? So I'm excited to dive into our conversation today about STEP and the STEP program. And you've really been at the forefront of it. You've been part of its creation, part of the implementation, and going out and meeting with these community leaders to help implement STEP. So, you're the expert, and we're really excited to hear from you. So, for someone that may be listening in today who has no idea what STEP is, could you please describe to that listener really what is STEP?
Yeah, so STEP stands for Stronger Together Empowering Performance. It is our turnkey fitness solution for senior living and was built in alignment with our commitment to raising the standard for wellness for older adults. It is a vehicle to deliver our world-class equipment, evidence-backed research, as well as an implementation framework so that when communities have STEP on site, they have the tools for their staff to be educated, they have the tools to market it, they have the tools to track the data and the outcomes. And so it's not just delivering a program, it's ensuring that we're delivering all the tools that a community might need to actually make that program successful.
Oh, it's awesome. So it sounds like, right, not just selling equipment, not just providing equipment to an actual community, and not even just stopping at, hey, here are some programs to go along with that, but a little bit more than that. And you mentioned really educating and empowering those communities to really enhance performance for their population. So, what was the inspiration for this?
Yeah, so when I moved into working primarily in our older adult market, no, like Kaiser's known in the older adult market. There are communities that have had Kaiser for over 20 years. And the common thread that I was seeing was they love Kaiser. They love the way it feels. They're very brand loyal and they understand it's just so beneficial for their community members, but a lot of the time they didn't fully understand how to use the equipment to its fullest. And then I also saw a gap in the understanding of kind of basic training principles, or at least the application of them. And so my first kind of move was to design a pilot project where we could go into a few of our communities. And then that helps me understand the needs of our partners as well, but also to see what kind of results we might get by really taking training principles as well as our equipment, as well as some on site education and working hand in hand with these people to see what the outcome would be. My expectations were that it would go well because just because it's planned and it's evidence back. So that was my hope, but I also was excited to see how it was adopted, not just by the residents but by the staff that were on site. So that led to the pilot project. And after consulting with all kinds of people, either out in the space in communities, but then also on site at Kaiser, learning about the origin of STEP. Because STEP, this is an updated and rejuvenated and revised version of STEP, but STEP was actually first pioneered 30 years ago, and it was pioneered by Kaiser. It's our program that we're bringing back and making even better.
All right, so a revamped program, which is super cool. I'm curious to know more about this pilot program. Where did this start? Where did this begin? And what was some of the feedback from the pilot program?
Yeah, so we went into two communities here in North Carolina, um, and two different kind of communities actually. One that was just the community, no, they weren't open to outside membership. It was just the community. We had 20 residents at that community. And then we were at River Landing at Sandy Ridge was the name of the community. And then the other community was Duke Center for Living at Galloway Ridge. And they're a community. Galloway Ridge is the community, but they're partnered with Duke Center, and they have a membership base of about 1,500. So we had a mix of mostly the membership was a part of the program. It was a 12-week pilot project, and we tested beginning, midpoint, and end with these communities. And we had amazing, like it was great to see the numbers. I love to see the numbers and see somebody's leg power improve by 80%. We had a 72-year-old woman have an 80% increase in her leg power from beginning to end. But the average increase across all the participants was 17.9% in the power, which was great, right? I mean, uh, that's only 12 weeks, in my head. It's like after that, it really fueled a lot of the efforts to bring STEP to a fuller offering. But, the big part of that, which was so powerful, was actually being on site at the end of that 12 and hearing the stories from the residents. So it's like, yeah, the numbers are great and that's wonderful. But, there was a resident, and one of the questions I kind of posed to him was like, what are you looking forward to in the future now? Because he said he was just feeling so much better. And he actually broke down in tears because he didn't really have a plan for his future because he was in so much pain before he started. And so he kind of felt like, I mean, he's 83 years old. So he was kind of felt like his life was coming to a close, and he was having so much pain every morning. He got up and went to the kitchen or to just get out of bed and do anything. And he had this entirely new outlook on what might be possible for his time moving forward. And so, for me, that's just like fuels my passion to bring this to as many people as possible because, yes, the numbers are great, but that personal story where this man has seen such a huge improvement in his quality of life is really what it's about.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for the share. I mean, it's great to see the alignment between the two, both the objective improvements, but then also anecdotally, just how people are self reporting how they're feeling and what that can do to inspire them. So you mentioned testing and that you
Mhm.
tested everyone over this 12-week period. What was that test? Was it leg press? What machine were we testing on?
Yeah, for the pilot project, we used the leg press. We did a leg press, we did the 5 times sit to stand, we did a gait speed, and then did we do we did not do a balance test. We did a self-reporting test on confidence and falls. Now we've changed that testing for the actual STEP program, and we've added in the upper body power. So it will be a chest and a leg press power test in our new protocol. But yeah, for this one, we just use the leg press.
Very cool. And you mentioned before that you saw about an 18% increase over those 12 weeks. Is that correct?
Yeah, average improvement of 17.9 across all residents. And we excluded data from that because we had an attendance policy. We actually had more people participating, but we did exclude some of the data. I mean, the results, like, it's just so cool to go back. A lot of these people had never participated in structured programming that really targeted strength and power. Maybe a bit of strength in what they're doing, but, not in that kind of structured way where they're committing to, a schedule, and they're committing to an attendance policy and all of these things. So it was exciting to see that, okay, like, and for them it was exciting to see, for them it was exciting to see the changes that they could have. And we had this guy, he was also in his 80s, and he said during his debrief, we were chatting about it, and he used to live in the Pacific Northwest, so he loved talking about Canada with me. So he was telling me, he goes, well, I I can go up a pound on these machines. So I can go up a pound each week, and it's not too much. And at the end of a year, that's 52 pounds. And I thought it was so
Hmm.
Well, just nice to hear like he's thinking about, I need to challenge myself. I need to progress these loads in order to see a change. And what was great is afterwards, I was kind of debriefing with the staff. And I was like, hey, Bob was saying such and such. And one of the staff member was like, "Ah, finally, he got it. He got it." He's like, I've said that to him. So it was wonderful to see, one, that the staff are reinforcing the message, but the residents are picking it up and running. Or actually, he wasn't a resident, he was a member at the space. And to see him like take it and actually internalize it and then give it back to me was like, okay, now we're really cooking, because he's taking this and actually applying it himself as his own knowledge.
Yeah, and you shared this story about this one individual who is thinking about the rest of his life, and we know that, we're trying to have both lifespan and health span run parallel with one another for as long as possible. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal here. And then you also mentioned strength and power. So, and we know with age, power is one of the first things that declines.
Mm-hmm.
So, STEP, as I understand it, really addresses powerpenia and is really focused on power and strength. And you had mentioned that as well. So, tell us, why is power so critical for these people?
Yeah, well, critical and misunderstood as well, or just not thought about. Again, I think you're dealing with a subset of the population. I mean, look, for the most part, people don't know about power. Like if I just go into the gym, somebody my age isn't necessarily thinking about power, or thinking about that they're training for power, or even thinking about what is considered power, like what is a power movement, And so, a big part of the implementation, or I think the success in any program with any client, is being able to like pull apart these things and actually give them, like, explain to them what this means, And so I focus a lot on my education around that, because we know that power drops off the earliest and the fastest when it comes to power, strength, and muscle mass. So if we know that that's dropping off the earliest, and there's like specific things we can do training wise to address that, then we're going to see, we can actually, one, we can measure it on our equipment, which is great. Two, then we can actually apply a method or a program intervention that is going to help improve that. But the other piece is, well, why do you even want power? Like for these people, look, if you need to go upstairs or get up out of a chair, you need muscular power. If you want to play pickleball or you are concerned about falls, when you go to trip, you need power. And so there's part of that challenge of even communicating and getting the understanding through to the participants or the older adult or the client or whomever it is in front of you. But it is also with the wellness person, whether it's wellness staff or a trainer or whatever. It's having them help understand, like, actually, we need to train power, and that actually requires a speed component. And a lot of the stigma and education or belief that is in, especially in the communities that I was in. And I think it's, I would make a guess that most communities are under this idea that they need to train slow. It's safe to go slow, and that they need to go slow in order to actually get a training effect. And so there was the safety piece. So that required a lot of support from us when we were delivering the pilot project, a lot of support from us of, it is completely safe on this equipment to move fast. And if we're going to increase that power score, which for the residents, like that was, or the participants in the project, that was a big deal to be able to see that power score, because it drove their intent. Like when they're looking at that score and you're pointing it out, I'm cueing them, this number right here, we want that to go up. And there's two ways we can do that. We're going to increase the load, and we're going to get you to move fast. And it didn't take that much time, because when they're staring at that number and trying to make it go up, then, it's like, I don't actually, yes, I've explained the importance of power. Okay.
Mhm.
Yes, I've educated on that. But then when they get on that natural competition, that natural like, ooh, what can I do? Can I surpass that? Can I beat that? That just came out. And I think that really drove the intent of the entire program because when they got on, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at load and they're looking at the power score. So it was really fun to go back, right? Because I was not on site for the 12 weeks. I was there on week 0 and I was there on week 12. And it was so fun to go back on week 12 and see how competitive they were. Like to see them looking at that number and just driving after a better score, you know, so much fun.
Yeah, I bet. And it's not too different than working with a population of athletes, where the moment you get
100%.
them on, a machine and there's 3 or 4 or 5 of them or a whole group, and they're looking at this number on the screen, this piece of objective data becomes very motivating for everybody within the group, not just to compete against each other, but to compete against themselves, which is no different than what you experienced there with the pilot program and in these communities. So I like what you hit on saying that look, it's not just training for power. It's not just the program and the machine that can do this, but the understanding of why power is important. And as we
Hmm.
know, power is really specific to the individual, right? An athlete jumping, a 25-year-old basketball athlete, his or her power is going to be very different than an older adult in their 80s trying to get out of a chair. So it's very task specific, but also individual specific, which I think you hit on, which is really great. So
Well, and like the best programs, that's clear in the research. Like the best programs, or the programs that are most successful are attended by uh, or guided by professionals and are individualized. And I'm not sure if you've seen this step video, you probably have, but one of the participants was talking about you're competing against yourself, and no one told her that. That was the attitude she naturally adopted by looking at a score on a screen and being supported to go in and get a better score. And everybody adapted to that a little bit differently. So they get to bring themselves into that and you get to see what they do with it. So it's fun.
for communities that have never had Kaiser before, that now bring in equipment into the facility and begin with STEP, what's the feedback you're getting from those participants about how the Kaiser pneumatic resistance feels for them?
Yeah, so, I am not sure that I've been in a community where they've never had Kaiser. Like, I've certainly talked to communities that have never had Kaiser. I've talked to wellness professionals that have never had Kaiser and get on Kaiser. But when it comes to actual residents, they will talk, like residents that have Kaiser or access to Kaiser or older adults that have access to Kaiser, they will talk about the difference. So we had one of the participants. Had been in a hospital setting training and he had just been using regular iron mass in his rehabilitation from I'm not sure what. And he had the comments of, man, this just feels different. This just feels better. I really like this. And he didn't need any education on that at all. I mean, like we could give him all the education on pneumatics versus mass, like we could do all of that. But for him, I just naturally moved toward this. It feels so much better. It's so much easier to adjust the weight. And I've heard that time and time again from different residents that might be using other kind of mass-based resistance in their community because they might have access to some of that. Duke Center for Living has a ton of Kaiser equipment, but it also has some traditional equipment. And they can't always put their finger on why it's different, but they have a preference for it. So and sometimes I go into the education of it for sure with them, but it wouldn't matter if I did or didn't, they would still move toward the Kaiser because it feels so good to them and it feels smooth. It feels so smooth is the report.
Got it. And earlier you had mentioned the safety aspect of it. So can you hit on that too? I know that's a barrier when considering a lot of different types of equipment to bring into these communities. So can you talk a little bit about or expand on the safety aspect of it?
Yeah, so that was something when I started doing more education here of like how do I get this? Like, how do I communicate this? How can I, because it is a barrier. It's like this idea that moving fast isn't safe. And one, they need to lean on your confidence. So as a wellness professional, being confident in what you're actually prescribing makes a very big deal in how willing the people that you're leading are to follow. And so that was a big piece of it. But the other piece is it's not it's not speed that's unsafe. It's the equipment that isn't able to handle speed safely that's really important. And our equipment handles speed completely safely. Whereas, and I talk about this, like that is can be a challenge with power if you're using traditional methods. Is I wouldn't recommend it. Like it isn't going to be safe. So like in some ways, like, yes, that's true. And here's why it's not true in this circumstance. We're not, doing power cleans here. We're on a piece of equipment that is very much limited in its degrees of range of motion. And we have, a resistance method in pneumatics that is safe to handle that speed, making it so much safer on the joints, which is again points at what these residents and clients are talking about of it just feels better. It just feels smoother. Well, yeah, because we don't have inertia playing in because we're working with pneumatics. So it's definitely a barrier, and not just with the residents, with the staff as well. But once they commit to it, and again, when they started by staring at that number and trying to get a better score, they naturally just started moving faster, right? So, and safely, right? Because they weren't getting tremendous amounts of muscle soreness either after their training, right? So now they're training, they're getting these great results. They're not having all of this, soreness around it, and it feels smooth and safe. Confidence just really grew across the time.
Yeah, awesome. Let's pivot to the staff side of things. I'm curious to know how this works. Let's say I'm a fitness director at one of these communities in North Carolina, South Carolina, wherever it may be, and you reach out to me about STEP. How does this program even start? How do I implement it, and how does Kaiser help me do all of that?
Yeah, so we have so many really cool assets and resources that we've created to go along with this. And all of the things that we have developed yeah, we developed it from, all our backgrounds in coaching and sport and exercise prescription and all of those things. Um, and from running wellness programs in other places, like all of that comes into play. But we actually ask the communities, how are you, what would be helpful for you? And to be clear, it's a living, breathing thing. As we get more and more communities in this, we're going to be listening, and we're going to continue to provide the resources that communities need in order to make this successful. But if you're coming in and you're like, I want to run this step, how does this happen? The second somebody decides that they're doing this and they decide to partner with this on this journey, this step, one, they're going to get every step of the way prior to, even if they've ordered equipment, because sometimes communities have equipment and they're just adding step to what they already have. Um, but what they're going to do is they're going to get a sequence of emails that's going to deliver all the things that they need. First and foremost, we have a step certification that the staff that are on site are going to be given. And the expectation is you're going to get through that certification. And then when we come on site, you're going to be primed to review and really get into the practical side of how we apply this program. The other big support that we have is the Kaiser community. And we have a section off for that where you're going to be able to ask questions to a STEP expert. You're going to be able to access all the resources that go along with STEP, which is going to be the marketing resources you need to share it with your community successfully. And also the resources to celebrate your success when it's done. It's going to have educational materials that you can share with the residents, flyers, posters, pictures, videos. We've tried to think about everything that a community might need to be able to promote this internally and then promote it externally to potential new residents that are coming in. We want them to have the assets to say, this is our commitment. This is where we're going, and we're supported by Kaiser in that. And this program has, depending on how many years someone's decided to commit to, you're going to get all your programming for those years. So that's kind of the big initial. And then we come on site. And when we come on site, the purpose of that is one, to think of it as like a launch planning. Like, we want to relaunch your wellness space if it's been around for a while, or if it's a brand new wellness space, we want to help you launch it. And this program is a really exciting thing that you can invite your members, your residents to kind of kick that off. And it's always, I'm sure you experience this in your coaching, like where you would tell somebody something a million times, but then they heard it a second time from somebody and they were like, oh, I finally get it. And it's like, sometimes the staff has been telling their residents, look, we need to do this and you need to strength train. But then you have an outside professional come in and say it and supporting everything you're saying, which then is going to support the wellness professionals' efforts moving forward. Hopefully drive them towards their wellness initiatives with more success. So when we come on site, we do education of the general staff, we do education of the wellness staff, we do education of the residents, and then we walk through all the testing protocols, all the programming, and all the resources that are available to them to be able to implement this successfully.
Yeah, I think that's so important, the education side. I mean, we hit on it before, but to have this three-headed, education piece, which is not just the fitness leader in that community, not just the residents, but then also the people in charge of that community. I think it's really important for everybody to understand what's going on there and how this really impacts everybody. You have more buy-in across the board, and you have
Yeah,
this
100%.
understanding of why, not just what, but why this is here and what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, 100%. When like, we're going to be the experts on Kaiser because this is our stuff, right? And education that's provided specifically from the vendor is always going to be more valuable than, say, going on YouTube and hearing from somebody that is, they might love Kaiser, it might be a Kaiser champion. You're probably going to get some good info there, but the messaging and support and education provided by the vendor itself is going to be the best thing that you can get.
Yeah, and I think, I can speak for our company is that we really view this as a partnership, not necessarily just a sale. So this is an extension of the sale, is that now we get to create a partnership between the buyer, the customer, and this is something that lasts much longer than just the sale transaction, which I think is fantastic. So how about from a programming standpoint now, can you hit on or shine some light on the programming that we've provided for this STEP program?
Yes, so there's 4 quarters of programming in each year of STEP, strength and power based programming. We have the Kaiser Performance Index, which is our assessment protocol. And then we've got some specific programming as well. I believe we've got pickleball, we've got a golf program, we've got a couple different kind of specific targeted goals, I guess. Programming, pickleball is a big deal. One of the communities that we did the pilot project in, they have a 9-hole golf course at their community, so golf got asked about a lot. And that library is just going to continue to grow, especially as requests are made, but especially as we see what the needs of more of these partners. We're in the beginning of STEP right now. We're about to start launching this in a couple communities this fall in a longer, in the year-long process, which we're going to get even more valuable feedback and be able to provide kind of these specialized programming pieces. But yeah, it's exciting to see the interest
Yeah, I think it's great to see that we're really leaning into the partnership aspect of it and our users to get feedback as this evolves and it grows. And as you mentioned, this actually started a really, really, really long time ago. And now we have this rebirth of it. But even though there is a rebirth, it's still something that's in the works, which I think is great because it allows us to really end up providing a finished product that has been reviewed, that has been tested by these actual users and really co-created by these users in the end.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned like a couple things in there. One, the partnership aspect. You know, Kaiser's vision is to improve human performance, regardless of age or physical restriction. That doesn't, that means to me, you can't just drop off equipment then. Because if our goal is to actually improve human performance, then what are we doing to actually further that? Right. And STEP is the answer to that. STEP is the answer to that, and an ongoing partnership, because we know that these communities are going to have success, that they're going to get the results when they're applying this stuff and have the education on even how to do that. And then the other piece that you mentioned about like the origins of STEP, I don't know if I said this earlier, but STEP was originally helmed by Colin Milner, and Colin Milner is now the CEO and founder of International Council of Active Aging, but he used to be the Kaiser head of sales, 30 years ago. And so it's really interesting, the timing of it. It feels kind of like kismet almost, but Colin was telling this story at a webinar or at a conference or something, and he was saying, in 1996, he was in the landmark study out of Tufts University that was done on Kaiser equipment came out, and what that study showed was that resistance training was very beneficial for frail older adults. So, Colin tells a story of that study being released. And we actually have a really cool picture of this 91-year-old woman on some old Kaiser, like an old Kaiser leg extension, 1996. And when Colin got that information, he was in this cab with the head of the CDC, and he was so excited. He was like, look at this, look at this. This is going to like be so important moving forward. And this guy, the head of the CDC, said it'll take 30 years for that research to kind of permeate the minds of the people out there. And then, STEP was kind of birthed from there. And Kay Van Norman of Brilliant Aging was also involved with the Kaiser Institute of Aging and was heavily involved with the implementation of STEP at that time. Cool, you've got this backstory. Well, that's 30 years ago.
Right.
So 30 years later, here we are. And it is very well accepted that resistance training is important in these wellness programs. And yet, most wellness programs are not implementing it effectively, So now there's that piece. And then the other piece is very few of those studies actually studied power. They studied strength, they studied dynapenia, but they didn't study power. And so there's this thing where we're kind of at the forefront of that because we know the importance of power. I think the research, again, we're going to see that uptick in the next however many years and decades to come. But we have a really important place, I think, in that we have this program and we have the education and we understand the importance of this stuff, and we get to bring it to these people before, we get to bring it, just like Colin brought STEP into these communities to champion resistance training. We get to bring that back using modern technology, things like these online learning platforms and communities, and the fact that we can hop on a Zoom at any time and help a partner on this journey. But we also have the ability to really target not just resistance training, but power training. And so I think the timing is, especially the timing and the research, and the 30 years is one thing, but we're also at a time where the last of the baby boomers just turned 65. And so the population is at a place where they really need these tools, and exciting that we actually have them available to provide to these communities and partner with them on the journey.
Well said. I mean, that was awesome, and appreciate the tidbit and the journey of Colin's words until now, or the head of the CDC's words until now. So, what kind of flexibility does the STEP program provide? I mean, let's say I'm a community fitness leader and I only have one or two pieces. Could I be enrolled in STEP? And on the flip side, the other end of the spectrum, let's say I had a bunch of Kaiser and a lot of other types of resistance training methods and equipment in there. Can STEP work for anybody? Does it have to be Kaiser only? How does this work?
Yeah, you definitely have to have the appropriate equipment for it. The way it's designed right now, like we have designed the programming around a specific set of equipment of 6, 9, and 12 pieces, just based on what we understand about resistance training and the aging population and how they need to train. We have some communities that are interested in STEP, but their equipment doesn't feature the power score. So, that's not going to work either. So we do have specific equipment recommendations we make so that the programming can be applied and we can actually get the results we're going after. And then was there a second part to that question? I feel like I'm missing something.
No, just is a requirement for having a minimum amount of Kaiser, but then also if I have other forms of resistance training and in their mass-based resistance, can that be weaved into this, or is this really specific to Kaiser equipment?
I think I can see us moving that direction. Right now, no. I think right now we're focused on the product we have and getting it to as many people as possible. But I think as this kind of gets picked up, that might be a direction we go where we can offer, yes, you can train on Kaiser and you can train. It gets way more individualized as we start doing that. And so that's where the challenge arises with the programming piece. If you've got 50 communities and they all have 50 different pieces of equipment, then the programming becomes a little trickier. But I feel like that's kind of one of those things I feel like we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I think like we definitely have partners that take their Kaiser equipment and they have also mass-based resistance and they create circuits or they create programming that involves both pieces. And I think that's great. Like you're going to you're going to be able to target different things that way. And I think that's wonderful. But right now, STEP doesn't include that kind of programming.
Sure, but it sounds like the way it's being adopted is that it does provide for some flexibility for a community fitness leader. It's not so rigid in that these principles can't be applied to other areas. And it's their choice on, how to use it
100%.
as they see fit for their population. So the other question I had was, how much does testing play a part in the programming and in the STEP program? Are there specific times throughout the program that users are supposed to be testing?
Yeah, so we encourage them to test quarterly. Yeah, we encourage them to test quarterly, and then we can actually get the feedback on how each program, like what kind of results did we get out of the programming. And I think if we're looking at creating engagement and retention in the wellness programs, it's really helpful for the participants to be able to see and track the changes that they're making from program to program.
Yeah, that's great. Now, question for you. For a wellness director or executive director right now of a community listening in who maybe feels stuck about the programming that they're providing, about the equipment they're providing, whether that be walking clubs or just chair yoga, what's your message to them about why STEP could be a spark for them and what they're looking for?
Well, what would my message be to this person? Power really matters. It really matters for these individuals. It matters for their quality of life. It matters for them to maintain their physical capacity as long as possible. Because a person that's going to maintain that physical capacity and that functional independence as long as possible is a person that is engaging with your community, that is able to contribute their natural skills and gifts to the community, that gets to be able to live life on their own terms longer. And if we're not addressing these very, very clearly evidenced things of power and strength and muscle mass, that we can, acquire through doing more structured programming like this, then we're really missing out on a big piece of the challenges that aging brings. We want, older adults that participate in wellness programs typically stay independent 2.7 years longer. That matters. That matters. That means that matters from the person that's experiencing 2.7 years longer. but it matters on the back end for how vital your community is, right? I mean, it's there is a reframing of aging that is happening right now in the sense of agency and bridging the gap between age and agency, and this idea of the narrative of the last third of your life, right? That idea of health span, extending our health span to actually meet our lifespan. And older adults have a far greater expectation now, more than ever, that they want access to that and that they want to stave off these things. And so, yes, being active is important. And I think walking clubs are great. Those are great social things that we can engage in, and they're great ways to build community. You know, a lot of these other programs are wonderful for those things. But when it comes to actually tackling this idea of functional independence, we have to have power training in the mix. I think it's our responsibility to do that. And I don't, you know, wellness professionals and people in these communities, they don't get into this because, it's this fancy exciting, like thing. They get in because it's a heart-centered profession. For, these are people that really, you're in a community and you're seeing these people every day. You're in their lives, you're in their homes providing these services. And I think there is a responsibility there to really go after what understanding, one, what your limitations are, and going after the knowledge, the skills, and the resources to be able to provide that for these people. And I think as a vendor, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're communicating that message and offering it as well. So that's, I guess, what my message would be.
I can tell how much you love, being a part of these communities and visiting. It's clearly coming out in the way you speak about it. So it's really appreciated and awesome to hear.
It matters. Aging is not easy. And being in these communities, like, I was talking with a wellness professional and they had lost, in 1 year, think about this. How many losses have you had? And we don't have to get into it. It's personal, but, in 1 year, how much loss do you experience in like important people in your life that pass on? It's not very much typically, especially year to year. But in this community, I think they had 40 community members die in a year. And this wellness assistant had personal interactions and personal connections with 30 of those. So 30 losses she experienced that year. These are 30 people that she saw semi regularly, probably. You're dealing with loss regularly. And you're at this important time of life where dignity really matters. And I think in our wellness spaces, we have the opportunity to offer really empowering programs that hopefully create that independence longer, to be able to live with that dignity even longer.
Yeah, well said. Well said. We spoke with Pat Van Galen a few months ago too, who works in those communities out in Montana. She's doing a bunch of great work too. And she always talked about, this image sticks with me, about health span and lifespan and manipulating the trajectory of those things, right? So having them, like I said earlier, run parallel with one another. And then you really want it to fall off a cliff at the end. You don't really want it to be this slow decline, downwards with both of those, but really lifespan, health span, maintain, or increase, and then off the cliff at the end. So it's kind of an image that has stuck with me, and throughout this conversation too, something I've been thinking about. So looking forward, and we mentioned STEP is a newer program, or newly rejuvenated program. What excites you most about the future of power training and STEP, and where do you really see this in 5 to 10 years from now?
That's a big one. So this has expanded just so many times for me. Like I did not expect, I did not set out with, I'm going to build this program, or I'm going to champion this program at Kaiser at all. It's something that I could see there was a need for it. I could see that we had a history in this, and I can see that it worked. So how can we up the ante? In the future, in 5 to 10 years, I would love to see this program everywhere. I want it in every single community that's out there. I want people to understand that power training isn't a nice to have. it's a must have. And I want to see this globally. I have a meeting with a community in Australia coming up. And how cool that we are championing this and raising the standard and leading our own narrative for what this can be, for what aging brings, right? Because often, we're looking at aging as like, or the experiences of aging. And really, it's deconditioning more than anything, right? Like if we've never resistance trained, like we're just deconditioned. And yeah, that falls off even more as we age with the shifts that naturally occur with aging. But, where I want to see this go is I want to see a complete shift in how we approach training the older adult. And I want people to look to Kaiser as a thought leader in the space, you know.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
No, that's great. And I got one fun question for you as we wrap up here. Okay. You've been on a lot of pieces of Kaiser equipment. What's your personal favorite?
I can tell you my personal least favorite is the runner, but I really enjoy it. That's a tough one. I get on the leg press a lot because I do a lot of testing on that. So that's a lot of fun to me. I love the functional trainer because of the versatility. I can't just answer one. I love a functional trainer because it gives so much versatility. But the other one that I absolutely love is the four-way hip. Love the four-way hip.
How come?
So I think with my athletic background, so I never trained on Kaiser when I was an athlete. I never had access to it. And I was in a pretty dogmatic kind of school of thought where I just didn't even know about it. I remember seeing it at a school and thinking like, oh, that's interesting. Like, what's that about? But I was not an athlete anymore at that point. And so I have injuries from all the years of training like an animal because, Gabe, I was a complete animal. I was a complete animal. And so I have definitely some injuries and just niggles from different things that had a long time resolving. And so the four-way hip just feels amazing. Like it just feels so good when I do it. I have this kind of long kind of standing disc issue in my back that seemed to be really great with that. The other thing I like is I'm going to keep talking here. Okay. The leg extension pro and the hamstring curl. What I liked about those is with some of that kind of disc stuff, I have discrepancies in leg power on one side versus the other. And so to be able to train them independently and see those differences and then actually close the gap on those differences made such a huge difference. And it actually shifted some of the symptoms that I was having as far as pain. So that was really cool. But one of my light bulb moments with Kaiser that really, really changed things for me was doing bench press and doing a combination of air and mass on bench press because I didn't even realize that I had pain doing bench press. Like as an athlete, you learn to just shut down that response, or at least I had. And I performed a couple reps with mass, and then I did a combination of air and mass, and the juxtaposition of those two sets, one that was full mass and one that was half and half, was shocking to me. Like I have an exercise science background where I worked with traumatically injured people for years, and I know to not train with pain. Like I know that I've given that recommendation, I've educated on that recommendation, but in my head I was like, I always have pain with bench press, so I'm just going to have to shut this down if I want to keep bench pressing. It didn't matter what kind of supportive exercise, corrective exercise, prehab, rehab, like exercise that I did for my shoulder, I would always have pain. And so to do a few reps with mass and then to do a few reps of mixed mass and air was shocking to me because when I did those reps with a combination of mass and air, I did not have any shoulder pain for the first time and I don't even know how long. It shocked me. And it was like the light bulb went on at that moment. And it was early in my journey at Kaiser, so it was highly influential in my passion for what it is we do and what it is we make.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for the share. And last question for you. We started this episode with your trip out into the Northwest here. So as you think about returning home, are there any food spots or anything you're looking forward to as you go out to, back to British Columbia there? Any particular restaurant that you're really excited to have?
You know, I grew up in a really small town. So, nearest city 5 hours away. We did not have restaurants. We did not have fast food. We had a Dairy Queen. That was it. So, when I think about going home, I do not actually think of a single food place that I would want to go to. It's so wild to me.
Maybe some home cooking?
Well, no, not that.
All right,
And don't get me wrong,
Dairy Queen it is.
I love food and I love to eat, but it's so funny. Like there are like a couple new restaurants that have kind of popped up, so I'll definitely go check them out because my hometown has definitely evolved, that's for sure. But yeah, there isn't.
It's a blizzard. It's a Dairy Queen blizzard.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the answer. Well, maybe we can report back once you're back on the new restaurant scene
yeah,
there. So,
yeah.
Crystal, thank you so much for joining me today on the Kaiser Human Performance Podcast. Crystal is a part of our education team. She's an awesome part of it. If you have any questions for Crystal or anything related to STEP, you can definitely visit our website, www.kaiser.com. You'll see some information about STEP on our site there, and you can head to our education page. You can also reach out to Crystal. Crystal, email is crystalj@kaiser.com, correct?
You got it.
All right. So please reach out to Crystal if you have any questions related to STEP or Kaiser at all. Crystal,
Yeah, and
go
actually,
ahead.
Gabe, I'd like to offer that we have a free step guide on the website on the longevity page. So for anyone that wants more interest or wants more information about STEP, that's a great place to start because you can go there, you can download the guide, and it's going to give you a full walkthrough of everything that STEP offers. And then we have all sorts of amazing resources that I can share if you reach out via email.
Awesome. Thank you for that. You heard her. Go ahead on our website and find your free guide there to STEP. So Crystal, on behalf of Kaiser, our team, and the many communities you're helping and the lives you're impacting, both directly and indirectly, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And we look forward to catching up with you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe.
You got it.